Now, one of the things that I think we've all maybe thought about, but that we don't really give always enough energy to, that is the notion of we are what we think. So the inner dialogue that goes on in our head that we sometimes are not even conscious about really is the driver of our actions. So we have the power to actually choose our thoughts if we're a bit more present in the now. And our next speaker is going to talk more about this inner voice and how we can cultivate this inner voice to really reward us instead of maybe extracting energy or bad habits. And Jeanette Oxlund is a leading expert in mindfulness, personal development, and energy management with a decade of experience and also coaching top performers, leaders, athletes, and so forth. And she's here to share her wisdom and knowledge about the voice within. So please give it up for Jeanette Oxlund.
Yeah, and I think now I made the first mistake of, I don't have the earphones, so I haven't got a clue what you just said about me. But, all right. So today I'm going to talk about something that I think is always left over and forgotten when we talk about health. This one up here, your mind, the inner dialogue. But I don't know what you said, but I'll say a few words about myself before diving in. And instead of talking about all my accomplishments and how great I am, I'm going to take you back to where it all started, where I discovered my inner dialogue. 17 years ago, I was gifted with a set of beautiful twin girls. I knew as soon as I had them in my arms that my life was going to change forever. I guess a lot of mums feel that way, but mine surely did change. I loved them to pieces, but they were here to challenge me, to really make my way into who I am today. They didn't sleep. So, and when I say they didn't sleep, obviously they slept, but they woke up and woke up. I remember my mum asking me, are you sure they wake up that much? Aren't you just making it up? And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and put a line on a piece of paper every time they wake me up. And I remember at 1 o'clock, I went to bed at 10. I remember at 1 o'clock, I put line number 12, and I was like, I don't even want to know how many lines there will be tomorrow morning. It was a nightmare. And after a year and a half, my body collapsed. I woke up one morning with severe stomachache, got hospitalized, and while the doctors were running around trying to figure out why all my numbers were like left, right, and center, my blood pressure were close to dead, I started crying. And I didn't have a clue why. A few days later, I went home from the hospital. They didn't really find anything. But I went home with the stamp on my forehead, clinical depression, and a prescription for antidepressants. That was the beginning of some very, very dark months. I totally lost the natural instinct to live. I actually didn't want to be here. And the only thing that kept me here were those girls. Every time I tried to get out of here, every time I considered how I could escape from this, I was like, oh, damn, I'm stuck in my own life. I couldn't bear with the thought of what that story would do to my twin girls. It was not that much about them not growing up with a mother, because I felt shit. I felt like a shitty mother. But the fact that they were going to tell that would be a part of their story, I couldn't handle that. I even considered, if I accidentally get hit by one of the yellow buses out here, maybe that's easier for them because it was an accident. Luckily, I stayed. And by coincidence, I ended up at a workshop with an American doctor called Richard Moss. He was in Denmark to talk about meditation. And 17 years ago, meditation, it was not for everybody like today. It was for a very few that I did not identify with. I was an academic with a big A. But I went, because something, I don't know, something wanted me to go. And in my first meditation, sitting there in Österbro, I heard the church bells in the background, a wind touching my cheek. In that moment, I had the most profound experience of my life. I was pulled away, or I landed in me, realizing I had an almost physical experience of not being what I was thinking, that I was here, able to watch what my mind was creating. It was such a mind-blowing experience for me, but in that moment, I stepped out of my depression. And I know even my own academic mind, and probably you guys would say that's not possible, but I did. There was lots of chemistry that needed to get back into place, both in body and mind, but I really did step out of my depression. Because I don't know if you can imagine being depressed, having thoughts heavier and darker than anything, and in that moment, when you realize it's just creations of my mind, that was like being pulled up from the muddiest, darkest, whatever, breathing fresh, bright spring air for the first time. It was mind-blowing, and I knew from that on that this would change my life, and that was going to be my path. And here I am today. So, your body doesn't know the difference between what you think and what happens in reality. So if you go around thinking all good and juicy, nice, loving thoughts, your body will create cocktails of happy hormones. But if you run around creating catastrophe, dark thoughts, your body will experience catastrophe. It will produce cascades of stress hormones, activating your sympathetic nervous system, creating stress reactions that wears down your energy. Every time you have a stress reaction, it takes some of your energy. And I just want to point out, from free fantasy, nothing has actually happened, only in your mind. And there's a whole story to that as well. If we carry on like that forever and ever and we never recover, you'll cause loads of inflammation, loads of problems with your hormones, etc. We're not going to go down that aisle today, but it's really worth looking into. So it pays off to be aware of how your mind, how you create thoughts. The bad news is that most of you have a rather pessimistic programming. And that's due to evolutionary stuff. We needed to be on the outlook for danger. We needed to always up our games to make sure there's food enough, like survival mode. Most of us are pretty good on the survival part today, but our mind is still producing that. Where's the danger? Where could I optimize? Which is a shame, because we are not in survival. If we go into the more personal part, we are all wired with this kind of filter that we see the world through. And this filter is also affecting how you construct thoughts. You were born into this world by a certain set of parents. You had a certain group of friends, teachers, in a community, in an environment, in a culture, which all programmed you prior to the age of 12. So whatever the child concluded was a safe way to behave and act, to feel safe, loved, taken care of, and be able to survive, is actually the filter that's created that you are all looking through if you're not very conscious. So a lot of you, when we are unconscious, we're actually tiny little 7-year-olds trying to feel safe in this world. So what we want to do, or what is effective to do, is sort of bringing this programming up, this childish programming up Re-evaluate what was true when I was 7. Is that still true today? Do I still need the same kind of love and care from parents, from the community, or is there a different way to be in the world? Most of all, we discover there's a very different way to be in this world. And the good news here is that our brain is plastic. So when we become conscious, we can start reprogramming by doing something different. So it's like an emotional reprogramming, but it's also, you'll also make changes, new neural paths in your brain that will support the new programming, the new behavior. So how do we do this? There's lots of modalities. The one I was introduced to and want to introduce to you is meditation. So most of us think of meditation as a break. It's a very good break. It hacks your nervous system. Please go home and Google as well what it does to your brain. I would love to tell you about that, but you know, time. But meditation at its core is really what I discovered that day, that moment in that first meditation, is actually landing in you, realizing, discovering that you are not your thoughts. It's just something to be observed. And every single thought you create has an emotion to it and a physical sensation. And that's how it goes, both one way and the other. So being able to observe without identifying. Do you get it? So when you sort of have this little disconnection to your thoughts, you take charge of it, and it doesn't become reality. It becomes something you can reevaluate and do something different of. In many ways, if we're not conscious, the way you create thoughts will be your experience of this life. So it's not necessarily about what happens around you, it's how you perceive it. In meditation, we can start being in the observer position, and in this observer position, we get a different connection to what is us. And from there, we can also start observing how our own inner dialogue to ourselves is running. So how do we talk to ourselves? It's kind of easy to see, like when the mind runs away and you think, like for example, let me give an example. You are in the line in the airport. You're in the security line. By statistics, 9 out of 10 here would be annoyed about the queue being too long, maybe a little bit stressed that you're going to miss the flight. Yeah? If we are consciously aware of how that's just creations of the mind, we have the opportunity to stop and cultivate a different part of the truth of the same situation. I'm on my way on holiday. How great, and how, wow, thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for trying to secure that I'm not going to get blown up in the airplane. Both is true. Might be annoying, you might miss your flight, but that being annoyed is not going to change whether you will actually manage to get to the flight. And I bet most of you probably you won't miss the flight. Anyway, back to the inner dialogue where you construct what you say to yourself. It can be a little bit more challenging to really notice because you think it's me. That's the I speaking. But how can I say it? It's we can try in a minute, but just think back. This is a very simple exercise, and maybe it's not the same for all of you. But, for example, I really wanted a good night's sleep, so I was prepared for today. My teenage daughter messed that plan up, so I didn't sleep very much tonight or last night. I was very tired when I woke up, went to the mirror, and the first thing I said was, Jesus Christ, you look shit. You look like you haven't slept for a year. How are you going to be standing here talking about mental health? You look... So Can you imagine saying this to a friend? Holy moly, you look like shit. You're never going to be able to stand on a stage like this. Can you imagine the difference when you are conscious enough, awake enough, and you get into the mirror? And this is not about lying, saying, oh my God, you look beautiful, because my bags really are huge under my eyes. But you go to the mirror and you say, oh, darling, you look tired. What do you need today? What do you need for this day to be okay? How can I help you for you to have a good day? Can you see the difference in the way you put yourself into the world? And if you put this way of talking to yourself into all kinds of situations, every time you have to hold that huge presentation, you're so worried, and your inner dialogue goes along with the worry, even worrying you more by saying, oh, what if you fall through? What if you black out on stage? What if they discover that you're really not that smart? Maybe you get fired. Such harshness, brutality. And I bet if you are like most, 9 out of 10, if you had your inner dialogue written out on paper, if you haven't done this work, if you had your inner dialogue written out on paper, you would be like, what a mean bitch. It's the most brutal voice for most of us, especially when we are not on safe grounds, because that child wants you to be safe, and the child says, don't go there, don't go, don't, escape. But that's where the reprogramming happens. You stop, which is also what the meditation teaches you, to be so completely there that you can come 1 second prior to your subconscious programming that makes you react. So you stop, use all your meditative skills to contain whatever feels uncomfortable about doing what your grown-up mind wants to do, with the most loving inner voice, support from your voice, saying, you can do this, you're good, even if you fail, we're going to be fine, or whatever you need to hear. Now, do you want to go along on a tiny little exercise with me? So I'll sit down as well. So, both feet on the ground. And close your eyes when you feel up for that. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you can just look through the floor in front of you. Just let yourself drop into your body. Just recognize that the body is actually here with us again today. Feet on the floor. And let yourself land softly on your breathing. So let's just, the next inhale, go through the nose, all the way down into your chest, all the way down to the chair. And exhale, letting go of weight, tension, if possible. Again, inhale through the nose, all the way down to the chair. And exhale, letting go. So now I'll just stay with your eyes closed, and I'll take you into a tiny little visualization that's going to start out this process of discovering your inner voice. So imagine that you're sitting in front of someone you truly love. Maybe your best friend, a child, parent, whomever comes to mind. Just imagine looking at this loved one's face and eyes, and just really feel your love towards this person. Maybe you have words you want to say to this person, or just really send your love towards this person. And feel how easy it is for you to love, and how powerful it is to love. Now, see now if you can make the picture of the one you're sitting in front of change into a child. And slowly but surely you recognize this child because it's like a 5-6-year-old version of yourself. So maybe you have a recollection of an old photo of you, just seeing this tiny little innocent face. And no matter what you experienced then, remind yourself that you are here now, wishing exactly the same love towards this little person. Feel that this little person, how much you want this person to feel free, loved, safe, and also feel, if you can, that you want to take care of this little guy or this little girl. And maybe you haven't taken that well care of this little one. So like, maybe even in words, maybe you have a little promise you can give this little person that from now on, you will stand up for this little guy with your life. So this little person can live the most beautiful, safe, free life, or whatever this little person needs. Now, picture or check in with the fact that this little person you can bring into your arms, like hug this little version of you. And now you do it, you feel the little pounding heart from the little girl or boy close to your heart. Remembering that that little heart beating in that little girl or boy is still beating inside of you. If you need to make a promise to the little one, then please do now, and slowly but surely open your eyes. I hope that with this talk you'll dive further into this subject, but most of all, I hope that when you walk away from this chair, you'll grab that little girl or little boy's hand firmly. Because I know when you hold that little one's hand, it's so much easier to make loving, caring choices. It's so much easier to set boundaries. And it's such a different inner dialogue. This inner dialogue will change your way of being in life, and it will create the life we all deserve. So as a last point, just turn towards your neighbor. Just look at the one sitting next to you, and if you can't find someone, then maybe look around. And then see if you can notice the 5-year-old sitting next to you. And it's okay to stare now, but just look around and see if you can see that little boy. So now, go on into the world with your little one in the hand, but also see all the other little kids running around trying to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking us on this beautiful journey and reminding us about, I was just thinking, does anyone have a question?
Oh yeah.
Because we do have some time. Does the inner child not come out with a little question? Well, if the inner child does come out with a question, then you're around?
I'm around all day.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.